regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen, today October 15th, 2018 at 6:30. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item is approval of minutes. We have two sets of minutes. We had a regular meeting from October 1st. Is the first. Entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the minutes of October 1st, 2018 as written.
Second.
Motion by John, seconded by Liza. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'm sorry, was there any discussion?
Oh.
Nope.
I apologize. Okay, the ayes have it. I got distracted because, Robin, do we not need to approve the town meeting?
No, in the town meeting, you guys don't do.
Who approves that?
We never
Do you know?
have.
Nobody ever?
We've never
okay.
done.
Oh. So if we have them do all the minutes, the town clerk do all the minutes, then no one has to approve them. Oh, that'd be good.
Good idea.
Okay, great. Sorry, that's what.
I would make a
flustered me.
motion that
Did
we,
we not do that?
that we approve the minutes of the, special meeting on October 10th, 2018 as written.
Second.
Liza, second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the next item is present to speak. I just ask you to state your name and address for the record. Anyone present to speak? Yes.
My name is Todd Bissonette, 41 Cosgrove Road. I'm here to speak about a couple issues. Robin, in a little quick conversation before you guys came down, mentioned the state trooper has made contact and is going to be available sometime in the near future. So I prepared a statement and some items I was going to pass forward to the board, but I'm going to hold that in abeyance until after the state trooper. With that said, we spoke about a couple times at the TA stop what was going on as far as, I forget, it was a month or 2-3 ago, we talked about just making the streets safer and stuff, and I had mentioned about the TA stop, the stuff that was going on, and I told you I was going to punch out a couple of pictures. Is it okay to come up? This is like some of the things that happen. That's the route I go all the time. This was last week when there was a rainstorm, and you can't see the signage. And one of them here, there's a truck that parks illegal there all the time during the day, and then one farther down that's blocking everybody. And we're sitting in line waiting, and there's 3 trucks trying to process to go in. And
What signs? The signs from the truck stop, or is that what you're talking about?
saying, that where the tractor trailers are to go in, the first one, and passenger vehicles to go in the second one. And the trucks block it, you can't see it. As I said last time, where I saw the family, they were on the bikes, where they almost got hit, where cars will go in where the trucks are, in the midst of all of that congestion. And then cars would try to be coming the opposite way, and then cars that are going the same way as everybody's in line tries to pass on the left-hand side. It's just dangerous sometimes, that's all. If they were to move back like the check-in point, once again, where I used to work I dealt with scale houses and stuff with the DOT registration. If the DOT registration number is visible and everything's in place, they go in 1, 2, 3. But if there's a process, sometimes it's 3, 4, 5 minutes.
So moving the signs for the truck stop is not something that would be handled here. That would be something you'd probably take to planning and zoning. That is well outside our
Okay.
realm. These things were all determined when the truck stop was put in place. The size of the signs, the scope of it, and where they were placed. It has to do with property lines, and so that's something for planning and zoning, not for the Board of Selectmen.
Where would it go as far as like the lead-in time when you get the 3, 4, 5 trucks in a row, everyone's sitting there waiting?
I couldn't answer that to you.
Because that's what really is the
So,
biggest
I mean,
issue.
if you're talking about where they change their operations, that's by no means for us to determine, and those things were determined when they put the truck stop into place, but planning and zoning is where I would take those concerns.
Okay,
Would
because
you-
everyone's waiting on the road then.
Would
Okay,
you agree?
all right.
Yeah,
Okay, cool, all right, thank you.
you're welcome. Okay, anyone else present to speak? Okay, so we'll move on to correspondence. But yeah, I'm gonna give these to you, I would encourage you to share these with.
I got plenty of
with,
copies.
Okay, thank you. Hand those to Robin, whenever. So there's a list of correspondence, it's available in the selectman's office. The resident request, I'll mention in good and welfare, I thought maybe they would be here at present to speak, so I can talk about that when we get to that later. All right, in my status report, so I will start with, the ordinance, we did speak to, Sergeant, or Lieutenant Duda.
Sergeant.
He's a sergeant, Sergeant Duda. So he did come in, Rob and I spoke to him. He was gonna get back to us, but it's looking like our next meeting, November 5th might be the meeting, but we're waiting for actual confirmation that they couldn't, this one wasn't gonna be one they could make. So, if that's the case, then we'll put the item back on the agenda for discussion at that meeting. The, PCW agent, still in negotiations, with the union. I was hoping to have an answer today. Supposed to talk to someone tomorrow, so I'm hoping again tomorrow that we'll talk about that. The pillars under the assessor town clerk's office and the front steps, we're ready to go. Everything passed the, God bless you, everything passed the town meeting. You can see the temporary ramp has been installed. It's ready to go. We're anticipating the beginning of this week, which is today, or maybe tomorrow. Weather is playing a factor, so they can't give us any hard date when they'll be here. Last week's rain probably pushed back other jobs they had, so Robin has been in constant communications with them. So as soon as we know, we'll let people know when that's gonna be happening, and we have signs to put up so that ramp will be the temporary access until the front steps are completed.
And Peggy just informed me before you guys came
Mhm.
down that Jim signed off on everything.
Oh,
so
okay.
They're good to go.
Oh, perfect. So we had the permit for the temporary ramp and we had the demolition permit, while Jim was looking at the rest. So now, looks like they're permitted all the way through, and he'll check their progress, so hopefully nothing, comes up in the middle that throws things off. We're still hoping to be done before Election Day. If that does not happen, then the town office building will be closed to the public on Tuesday, the 6th of November, because the poll room needs to have a separate entrance than the main entrance of the building. So that will happen. On Friday, I received a resignation from our current assessor, Rich Trizak. He's here until November 2nd. We wish him well. He's moving south, so to do similar work, but he's not staying in Connecticut. He's leaving Hawthorne Woodstock, moving
Very south.
like very south, like
Not just the
like
shore.
Georgia south, not Connecticut, leaving Connecticut. So as much as we would love to be able to keep him here, I'm not sure we compete with Georgia. Maybe. We haven't had a hurricane. That's about all we have going for us. So we wish him luck. Huh?
In the summer, we're less human people.
We are less human, maybe.
Yeah,
and
the winter,
we'll
we don't
see.
mention the winter.
We don't
do we?
mention the winter, and apparently, that may be a draw. So, we'll start, Robin, prepare things so we can, start putting an ad out, for another part-time assessor, and we'll get together, interview committee and begin this process once again. So, and just for information's sake, our, assistant assessor, currently is not interested in the position, nor does she have all the certification to be able to sign off on a grand list. She's still a few steps from that. With that being said, I did ask her if she was interested, and at this time, she's still not. She could change her mind, but she's not right now. But she's still, several courses away from being certified, and you have to be certified assessor to sign off on a grand list. So this is something we have to make happen. There's still money left over from a steep grant from, when Christina was here. She had asked, I asked last year, just signed some letters again this year. We still have money there on the to-do list. It was money that wasn't used from Turnpike Road and one other project, I believe.
It was both.
Or different phases.
3 and 4.
So we've asked if we could use that money for a different project, and that would be the salt shed at Public Works. Still heard nothing, so we're asking once again. It's been on my status report, but nothing has changed. So once again, a year after this board starting, we're asking, so maybe go, if someone would just contact us. I don't anticipate anything will happen until after the election. We'll see where that goes. And video recording policy. So we haven't had much movement on our end in that. I did reach out to someone at CROG because it looks as though they have ways of streaming. That's a shared service that wouldn't cost us anything in equipment. So I'm just waiting to hear back from someone from there. I reached out on Friday, and hopefully, I think it was Friday, maybe Thursday, that they'll get back to me, and maybe that's an avenue we could look into for streaming all of our town meetings without any kind of budget effect. So fingers crossed. All right, Public Works. So they've been busy roadside mowing, digging out the drainage swales in the upper lot at Center School with roadside, more roadside mowing. Vehicle equipment repair and maintenance, mowing sight lines, removing trees in the river, blocking Liska Road bridge pipes, inspecting the plows for repair in anticipation of that S word, repairing washout on Penny Hill. The other thing to mention is one of our roadside mowers is down. So the weather this summer definitely put us behind on roadside mowing. I know it's been a concern to some residents. These guys have been out there doing what they can. Now they're down a roadside mower. The large tractor had extensive repairs a couple of years ago and has broken down with the same issue. The last time the repairs cost $24,000. We don't have a quote for now, but Derek is assuming that it would be close to that same cost. The tractor's 25 years old and doesn't seem viable. The machine had a CIP request for 18-19, but was moved out to 21-22. So one mower will be out roadside mowing, and they hope to get all that done before the winter season. So I anticipate it will be back on with more urgency on CIP. All right, we just have one item of new business tonight, and that's appointing a new recording secretary for the CIP, which is Capital Improvement Program Committee. So Todd Zabo, I don't know if you remember Mr. Zabo he had shown some interest in this position last year if it came up, because we knew Eileen was planning to step down, and then he had come forward for the Board of Finance position. So he's once again interested in recording secretary. So I will move to appoint Todd Zabo as the recording secretary for the Capital Improvement Program Committee, effective October 15th, 2018, expiring October 14th, 2019. Second, any discussion?
No, we met him all already.
We met him,
Met
yeah.
him.
And he's working in Wales for, is he working for the selectmen in Wales, Mass? So he's, got some experience in municipal government, so, all right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, old business. So Jim Rupert had, our building official, come to us last meeting asking us to consider increasing the building department fees. So I said I would do some more research, and I did. It was finding a slight needle in a haystack. What I discovered was the last time these fees were increased was June 21st, 1999. Prior to that, it had been 6 years, so you'll see, I shared with you from the Board of Selectmen minutes. Before that was April 19th, 1993. So there was a nice breadcrumb from 99 leading me to 93. There was nothing in the 93 minutes to tell me when. So somewhere between 1972, when they were $2, in 1993 when they became $8. So we're looking at a 20-year span where they went from 2 to 8, and in almost the same time frame, they haven't moved at all. So we are faced with, do we go with the recommendations of our building official? He shared with us information last meeting on where things were around the state. Robin, do you still have that paperwork? It's not in here. The ones from last time? Is it just in the minutes? The ones Jim had?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. The one item I think we should consider is, and I believe it's 26 cents per thousand. So we pay a fee to the state that's 26 cents per thousand, which is an education fee. A lot of the other, it's 26 cents per thousand.
Oh.
We don't collect that separate. So we collect, what we collect, we take that out of and turn that to the state. So not only have we not increased our fees to move with the increase in salary in this particular department or now the computer program we have, but we're taking what we have to now pay to the state out of that. So I think we're losing a little bit here. So at the very least, I think we should consider that, although I would, Jim had suggested that we increase from $10 per thousand to $12 on residential and $14 in commercial fees. So what I did see was, interestingly enough, there was little to no discussion at both meetings. They were one time on the agendas. One does say it was old business, but there is no meeting within 3 years of it being new business. So I think there might have been a typo error in when it went on to the 1990, the 1999. It is listed as, it was listed on the agenda as old business, but it was never on as new business. Certainly not within that calendar year, the year before. So it seems as though there had been little discussion that I can see. Doesn't mean there wasn't real discussion in the meeting, but it didn't go over months or weeks even. And in a 6-year period, they increased $2. So now what our building official is asking us is to consider a $2 increase 19 years later. And I know when we last met about this, you felt like you thought it was better to take out of the general fund.
Correct.
And I still feel strongly against asking the whole to pay for some.
Well, it's why, you know, supposedly this is done for the good of the town. Once again, we're asking people to, or we're telling people, you will use this service, therefore it's only fair that you pay for this service whether you want to use it or not. Of course, you know, my feeling is that we shouldn't have, or we should have just the very basic fees at all, as we should charge the 26 cents per thousand that the state charges because we have no choice in that. But otherwise, if I had my way, it would all be paid out of the general fund, which would let, keep in mind for the average citizen what this costs. Well, we're not gonna go backwards, I'm sure, so I still am opposed to increasing the fees. But
So we have that base $35 fee, and then it's $10,000 per additional $1,000 worth of construction on most of them. And those were, again, all increased in 1999 from roughly, most of them were $20 at that point. They went from 20 to 35. So when he's not asking for an increase in that base amount, just the per thousand, which would be $2. per thousand.
And I think it's also to the benefit of an individual, and it is also required, like, we can't, I mean, we are subject, as a town, we're subject to requirements for building. And, like, we're not allowed to just let anything go up that hasn't been, gone through the inspection process. It's to the benefit of an individual as well, so that we can ensure that houses are going up and being built to code, and the codes exist for a reason. So it's not just, I mean, it's a service that has to happen. That is mandated, it's not something we decided that we opted to implement. And this is not, and it's also not been raising with inflation in any way, shape, or form. So, I mean, I think to have a slight monetary increase for a service that we are required as a town to have, and that individuals benefit from significantly and are required to go through themselves, I mean, I don't understand the argument for not
So what's your-
allowing the cost to increase with 20 years of time. This isn't a dramatic increase, like a couple of dollars over 20
I
years.
really
seems
wish I
fair.
could have seen the pattern and how often we got to this point
Mhm.
to see, you know, they were changing relatively quickly. My guess is they didn't go from 2 to 8 in a 20-year span, but I can't prove that one way or the other. But now, in a 6-year span, it didn't seem unusual to increase those fees. And here we are 19 years later, where we have increase in salary, with technology, we're making things easier for residents. We have a new computer program, which has just been implemented, or being implemented. I apologize, they're hoping beginning in November for that to be in place, and they need our fees. They're getting to the point where they are gonna need our fees, to put into that system. And this will help offset those costs. Otherwise, the costs for those departments, you know, the revenue is, at one point was meant to offset the particular building department. Peter, you wanted to share something?
Yes, as part of the Board of Finance, I want to say that there was some serious opposition to the buying of the new software program because we saw that it would cause an uptick in fees, and that the fees would be necessary in order to support the program, which is why many of us were against it. And so now that it's passed, I can just see the fees coming to pass here, and that's all I wanted to add.
And I don't feel like this increase needs to happen only because of that. I think we can see that in 20 years, almost 20 years, they have not been touched. We are well behind, like towns and other neighboring towns in the fees that we charge. Is that a good thing to our residents? Yes, but is there a point where we're doing ourselves a disservice? Cause it is coming, the costs are still being paid for, but instead of the people using the service, and I heard the argument when there was discussion about the transfer station and charging fees. Well, it's only charged the people who are gonna use that. That's what this is. So I'm not sure how it's much different, but we're still well behind what other towns charge. We're just not quite as far behind. To me, at the very least, we should collect the 26 cents per thousand that we have to turn over to the state. That does not stay here. We have to pay that out. The rest of it stays as revenue within the building department. But the 26 cents per thousand is an educational fee.
Initiate the 26 cents, is that recently, or is it?
No, it's been several years.
It was 16 cents at
Yeah.
the time of.
Yeah, it was a
at the
lot
time
lower.
of the-
99.
So
Yeah.
State up
it's
to
ten
The
10
state
cents.
has upped it, and so even then we didn't collect, so we've never collected it separate.
Right.
And, every other town that we looked at and had, information on collects that fee separate, which to me, at the very least, makes sense. When we as a town are doing a project, let's say, the front steps, that's paid separate because it's, you know, that's where that fee comes from, so they pay that, and that's the only thing they pay, but, I don't know, it's,
No, to Liza's argument, I think that's saying that because the town, or because the state requires the town to do this, it would not be fair for the town to pay for it, so therefore we should pass it on to the actual user.
And that's not what I said though.
Well, okay,
That's your, so I was responding to your statement that you said in your previous statement that we should at least collect the 26 cents per thousand because the state requires that fee. The state also requires us to do this work. So that's what I'm commenting on, that we are required to do this. It's not an optional process
Yeah.
for us. So it's not like we have implemented this process that's completely elective. We are required to do this work.
correct,
So this is still required cost. We have to pay the salary of the individual who does this work.
correct.
So it's the same concept as the 26-cent educational fee. This is still money that we are required as a town to spend. So I don't understand why you would be okay with the 26 cents per thousand, but not increasing the fee so that we can cover our costs in the same way.
You're right, I'll withdraw my, my approval of the 26 cents fee, because again, am I maybe overthinking this? That the town is going to have to pay salaries, the town's gonna have to pay for the computer program,
And we have,
and, so therefore, if I understood you, it was, well, because we have to pay for this, it wouldn't be fair for the town, for the taxpayer to pay for it, so we should make the person who's actually using the program pay for it. Again, and when it comes to the transfer station, yes, it would only require people who used it to pay, but people had an option there. And this is part of my problem, if you didn't wanna use the transfer station, you can hire one of Mayo or whoever it is, and they'll come around and you don't have to pay.
but you have to pay somebody.
Well, you have to pay
You still have to
somebody,
pay
but you
somebody.
don't have to pay the town, you would have to pay the town the fee. As it stands now, you can still hire Mayo or somebody, but you're still paying for the, transfer station through your taxes. So that's, seems to me more fair, because you have, you know, it depends on what you wanna do there, as opposed to requiring somebody, to me, this would be the same way as, you know, if you were requiring people to pay fees here, even if they don't want to use the service. And yes, I know we don't want someone building a, house using a 2x4 as the main beam, and that's what this is supposed to, stop,
Prevent.
to prevent, but otherwise you have people who know what they're doing. I can talk to people who, put a new roof on their house, so they hire a, reputable contractor, the contractor puts the new roof on their house, they come down here and pay the fee, and to be inspected, and nobody ever shows up to inspect, because they know the house, the roof's gonna be okay. If they do show up, they'll just drive by and look at the roof.
I
And
had a
there's,
roof just recently done, and someone definitely came out to inspect it,
Did they?
and a fee was paid.
well, that's good.
So,
Yeah.
I believe when those things are done, our building official is absolutely inspecting them.
Well, I hope it came to my house, I don't know. I had to.
So-
But anyway,
But, so the discussion in the past has been that these fees were to cover things, the cost of the inspections, and the cost of the travel, and that's no, if these fees in 1999 took care of that, I cannot for a second believe that they currently do, because everything has increased in the last
I
19
doubt
years.
that they did then either, but.
So, and you know, that was the discussion, that the old fees didn't cover those costs, and then it's saying now we have to pay the state, so I think somewhere around 99, between 93 and 99 is when that fee was implemented.
And that fee, of course, that's just another
That's
another state,
And it's interesting because it is an education fee. That is
Okay.
what it's called, it's not even a building fee.
well, they had to call it something.
Well, I think it's interesting that
It was
if that's, money from that is going to education, it struck me as odd, but that's.
I doubt seriously that that means education as in
I
going
don't
to
know.
the schools.
I don't know what
I
kind
think
of
it more
education.
means-
More
So they
for
can
building
One
educate
would,
people.
one would
Yeah.
think, but that's all it's referred to as a state education fee.
It covers their manual. They
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
get every year.
So,
which is
Yeah,
expensive.
yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds more, it's,
it
Yeah.
sounds more, but it was a very broad
Yeah.
description.
So the challenge is though, like we have to pay for it. It's not like we have an option of whether or not we're gonna have to pay for
correct,
the
and we
increase
are,
in fees.
we are paying for it.
We are paying for it. So it's the question of, do you want it to come out of, do you wanna raise the taxes for everybody and increase our mill rate? Or do you wanna charge an additional fee? Either way, the taxpayers are gonna be paying more. So it's not a question of if people are paying for it, it's a question of
how.
how.
And
So,
who, and it really comes down to who's paying for it.
so if we wanna have a like, we've had this conversation now for the last 3 meetings, how significantly under-resourced we are. So if we want to, continue running and functioning as a town, we have to have this money somewhere. So it's either we collect it from everybody through taxes and increase taxes, or we increase a fee. So it's, which is more palatable to you?
Well, it's obvious to me, a fee is a tax.
Okay, so who do you want to pay that fee / tax, whatever language you wanna use? Do you wanna increase taxes for everybody, or do you wanna increase by $2 1,000 for the people who are using the service? Because it has to be one or the other.
I would have it, paid from the general fund, from the taxpayer, from the Wellington taxpayer.
So would you be in favor of not having any building fees?
That's not gonna happen, let's
Well,
face it.
I mean-
I mean, yeah, that would be wonderful if we could do that.
I mean, that's what, if they weren't in place, so that's what I think that I'm hearing. If we didn't already have them in place, you would not be in favor of any building fees.
Probably,
Okay.
but,
Then that's just more taxes that everybody has to pay. I mean,
Right.
so
And
it's not
so-
saving anybody money, like,
Right, so the
we
argument,
have to pay it.
the argument could be I could live in this town for, let's say, 19 years in a home and only one time have ever had to pay a building fee. Or in your way, I'm paying for it in my taxes every year and never having used that service, which is an option. I think unlike the transfer station, this is a service that's more limited in scope. It's gonna hit fewer residents. And I'm not sure, maybe some of our senior population or our, less wealthy population, how they would feel about having to pay building fees for something they may never use or be able to afford. Because they're not putting on, in a pool or putting on a deck or building a new home. And that I think about passing those along to when we think about it, coming out of the general fund and passing it along to everyone, someone's gonna pay for it. Is it the user or the entire population?
It's also the
Yes.
structure we have in
Sorry.
place for this particular issue.
Well, I think one of the way of looking at it as Bob Shabbat, 17 Jared Sparks Road. One way of looking at this whole thing is, as a taxpayer, I would not wanna pay for gentrification. And that's the swimming pool, that's the big home, that's the super nice driveway. I'm sorry.
Yes,
We're so informal.
I'm
So
sorry,
you're saying
Pete
your
Tanaka,
neighbor-
125 Mason Road. I just, viewing this as a service rather than as a governmental burden on our populace is what I'm having a problem with. You guys keep saying this is a service which we're providing to our population. No, this is a burden that that our population is suffering under from our government is what it
Right,
is.
so, but.
And
it's
then
still
we're gonna
required,
charge
and
you
we
on
can't get
top
away
of
from
that. And I understand Bob's point, and I think it's probably a good point, but, you know, I also own a home in an area that has no zoning at all. You build whatever the hell you want, and you live with it. It's up to you to make your own mistakes and to take some individual responsibility. Sorry, get off my high horse.
It's a building fee. When you build it, specs are supposed to be, followed and through the ordinance of the towns, to ensure the quality of the town, by permits, by what is by code, is, as this gentleman says, that there is no rule. Well, when you go from GFI to an arc resistor to just a regular circuit, when you're putting it in, the official's coming out and looking at it and saying, whether it's right or wrong, it's saving possibly somebody's life, health. If somebody was to build a house wrong one way and was to sell it shortly after, somebody's sitting there, it's what's inside the wall or how the structure's built, they're unaware of it. but you have officials that are in place to oversee things that get done properly, and you're not living next to somebody with a blue roof because they decided to put the shingles on from the top down.
Yeah, and I mean, it is both a service and a requirement.
And what I should say,
And I see where you're coming from, but we can't get away with not having it, so.
Yeah.
to
You
agree,
know,
why
these
would,
fees were put in place,
why would the general public be subject, I think his name is Bob, the gentleman here, to paying somebody that decides to have a 500-foot driveway and asphalt it and curb it? Why would I want to pay for that?
and
Why should, or a pool?
remember, we're not just talking about, we're also talking about residential, we're also talking about commercial properties.
You're
You
not,
get
you're
a
not paying,
FedEx who's putting a big addition on.
you're not paying for the 500-foot driveway. The individual who's putting it in, you're paying for somebody from the town to go and inspect that 500-foot driveway.
Right, for the permits, correct.
Now,
So they should pay their part for that driveway that they want.
well, then you can go, you know, I really don't like that argument because it's the same thing. Why should I pay taxes to support our schools? Because I don't have any, I never had kids, don't have kids, I'm not gonna have kids, I don't assume. You know, but I pay taxes to support our schools, I pay taxes to support our government, and this is part of the government.
Okay, so then what you're advocating for instead is increasing everybody's taxes so that we can cover this required process for the town. So it's an either or, it's either we raise the fee or we raise everybody's taxes.
Right.
It's an either or question. It's
Uh-huh.
not, unless I'm missing something very significant, there's not a option C. So which are you suggesting we do? Raise
I-
everybody's taxes or increase the fee
I
incrementally?
can see headlines now, Republican wants to raise everybody's taxes! Well, I would-
Those are our two options unless there's a third that you can present us with. Those are our two options.
I
Right,
understand that.
because what isn't covered out of these fees does come out of,
But I'm
General
saying that the fees are taxes. So we're talking about raising somebody's taxes, whose taxes we're going to raise. But you know, folks, it occurs to me that we've kind of beat this horse to death. And, I know where, you know, it's obvious what the arguments are going to be. So shouldn't we move on and figure out, are you going to try to do something with this? Are you gonna make some kind of a motion, or are we just?
well, we can, this is the, opportunity to have a conversation about it, so,
Yeah, I
I said I
understand.
do the research, so I did the research and we're having the discussion. So,
Erica, can I ask a question? Hypothetically, say, neither do I. Okay, let's just say somebody bought a tract of land and a builder came in and was gonna put in 100 houses at $500,000 a house. And all the building fees and everything that's associated, 26 cents, 30 cents, whatever it is, but it's gonna come up to a large amount of money. Why would it be the burden of the people that are already established, that have paid for their building, to pay for somebody else to come in to build from scratch?
so I think the difference in what I'm hearing you say and what the reality is, this particular department has a budget. And then the bottom line is, where does the money from that budget come from? Does it come from the fees to hope that you offset that? So, or it just comes as a service to the town, that's what I'm hearing John say. It's a service to the town that we have to do, and John feels like, similar to the transfer station, instead of charging a separate fee, we just charge. If you use the service, great, if you don't, great, but everyone pays the same fee. So the fees go to pay for essentially the budget of that department, not necessarily per house. So if there were more houses, there could be more revenue, potentially in that case. I don't see us going to a bit, hypothetically speaking, a large development like that here in Willington right now. But with these fees, there would be increased, there's an opportunity for increased revenue with a scenario like that. But the idea is not to make money off of, but to cover the expenses within the building department itself. And right now, the building department expenses are small supply expenses without having the budget in front of me. And the salary, and now not even all of it, a portion of this new software, because some of it comes from planning and zoning as well. So there are multiple departments that are using that software, so it's kind of broken up. So, but as the salary increases, it's not going, for the most part, it doesn't go down over the last 19 years, it's gone up. So the idea is simply not to make money off this service, but that it cover that particular department, that department pays for itself, really. And so one way is that it would pay for itself by those who are specifically using the service, or it would be paid for as a service from the town. But there are people who see it as, I'm paying for a building official who's inspecting your pool and your nice driveway and your extremely large home, is one way to look at it. If it goes in that direction, the other is, I'm putting those things in and I pay for them as I use them. So, it's not, unfortunately, it's not a service we get to have an option as to whether we offer or not. We have to, these are things we have to do, so where we come up with the money is where we're at. And back in the 70s, the nice ordinance put it on this board to be able to increase fees as necessary. I would be much more concerned if it was a short amount of time in which these fees have been increased, but 19 years is a long time.
I have a question.
Yes.
Now, is
Just
this
state your
a-
name for the record.
Oh, Maureen Locholi, 41 Cosgrove Road. Now, my question for you is, well, not for you individually, but for the board. But if this is an end user fee that is incurred by the end user, is this something that should go to possibly a town meeting, so the town will be able to have a say into whether they want their mill rate increased to serve the fees for everyone, or?
So, there was an ordinance created that actually allowed, when the building fees were set the very first time, so that was 1970?
72?
70 or 72, long time ago. It was then, the ordinance set the fees at $2, and then gave the authority of the Board of Selectmen to increase the fees. So I was surprised to see that it didn't go to town meeting, but by ordinance it does not. So the ordinance would actually have to be changed for us to go to town meeting. Now, there's no reason we couldn't do something like, say, have a public hearing and hear from people. That's always an option, but the ordinance is clear in how the fees are established going forward. And that's how they had been, both in April of '93 and June of '99 at a Board of Selectmen meeting. The building official came, made a suggestion, and then they passed. So that's where we're at today. That's how we got here. I thought it would have been a town meeting. I expected to find that in my research, but that is not the case.
But the Board of Selectmen can call for a public hearing and to put it as a line item on the minutes as a public hearing though too,
It-
right?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are you doing some calculations?
I was
before
doing
we-
some calculation. So coincidentally,
Okay.
I just did the inflation calculator online. So coincidentally, $2 in 1972 equates to $12 in 2017. So it is exactly keeping up with what the initial fee was set at in
Oh, isn't that
1972.
interesting?
I'm sorry, $12 in 2017.
Mhm. So, it is in fact not actually a net increase in charge, because actually for residents, we're saying $10, so it's even still a little bit less than what.
No, we're saying $12. It's an increase of $2, so go from 10 to 12.
12, okay,
And then to
this is
14.
Gotcha.
So the
So it is
business would be an
exactly in
increase of.
keeping with the
right.
$2
Correct.
that was being charged in 1970, whatever.
You know, Liza,
Just for a
back
point of
in
reference.
the 60s, you could get a hamburger for 14 cents still?
Yeah. Do
I
you want me to
did-
calculate what that is now? Because I just got the inflation calculator out for you. So I don't know, do we have the established numbers that we can make a motion to vote on this yet, or do we need to wait till the
We-
next meeting?
No, you could make a motion and you could, move, we have that document from,
I don't have it
Jim
in front of me.
provided us with, a letter, not specifically the fees,
Was it email?
it was
It
an
was
email,
the
but it's,
proposal.
oh, sorry, there are these, it's spelled out in here, Mr. Rupert stated that the permits already have a $35 minimum, however, administrative costs are more than that to process. He's proposing $35 across the board for all permits and $12 per thousand for residential projects and which is a $2 increase. He clarified that the smaller projects, finished basements, sheds, can sometimes take as long as the bigger permits to process. In addition, it was suggested changing the commercial permit, which would be a $35 minimum, plus a slightly higher incremental fee of $14. So his proposal is $35 across the board for everything, and then for residential, permit types, projects, it would be $12 per thousand and $14 per thousand for commercial properties. And, yes,
Right, the education fee?
yes. And the 26 cents education. Although I am not positive that his email suggested collecting that separate. But
I thought I remembered that he did suggest that.
he may have, it's not, I don't have that email in front of me now, and,
And so do
I know we've discussed it before, but I just don't, I couldn't say positively without looking at it.
So do we understand that this is, there's a the minimum fee is $35?
Correct. Which it currently is on,
Right, so if your project is gonna be $2,000, your fee is still $35.
correct.
It's only after you get up to like $4,000 that you begin to, get above there, okay?
Yes. And so that's what, oh, there was our building official,
The tag
walking
one?
by now. The only thing I'm not positive about is if he had advocated, for sure, for a separate fee for that 26 cents.
And that's 26 cents per thousand,
26 cents per thousand, yes.
okay.
Which,
Do we wanna ask him?
yes. I'm sorry, I whispered just for sake of privacy, decorum. So we'll just hold a moment until we see our building official once again, because we'll ask him, and then we'll clarify that. Okay.
Small town meetings.
Jim, Mr. Rupert,
Yes.
could we, we're in the discussion of, building fees.
Okay.
You, had asked for $35 across the board fee, and then $12 from 10 to 12 for residential,
Right.
and 10 to $14 for commercial. Were you also, suggesting that we collect the 26 cents separate?
Yes.
Okay.
So that would be $35 for the first thousand, or portion of the first thousand, and then $12 per thousand for residential, $14 per thousand additional for, commercial, and then 26 cents per thousand education.
And your proposal was for everything to be that 35?
A minimum
A
fee
minimum
of
of 35.
Yep.
So those that were over 35 would stay where they were?
Then everything would be 35. It
Okay.
would just even out to 35 across
Okay.
the board. It would make it very simple for staff to calculate. It would make it very simple for our new online program, which we're hoping to kick off in the middle of November, to calculate.
I thank you for clarifying that. That was our one question, so there you go.
So I'll make a motion that we, I don't remember all the details again,
So
but,
you can-
but that we make the increases as recommended.
Yes. And then we can attach the recommendation. I will second that. Not that we haven't been doing this, but discussion.
I wasn't sure exactly what the,
So the recommendation is a $35 base fee, a minimum $35 base fee of the first 1,000 or portion thereof, and then $12 per thousand additional for residential, and $14 per thousand additional for commercial. and the 26-cent state fee collected separate.
26 cents per thousand.
Per thousand, sorry, 26 cents per thousand would be an additional. Okay. Motion by Liza, I seconded. Discussion, if we haven't been having any of that.
Just remember everything I said.
Everything John
I
said,
stick with it.
okay. And I think I hear what you're saying, and if we didn't have fees already in place, I might see, starting from there. But because we already have these end user fees, and when, you know, they're only being paid for at this point by those who are using the service. I think we are well. Jim, so you're aware, I did find that it was 1999 was the last increase,
So it's been some time.
and prior to that, it was 1993. So there was a 6-year span and then a 19-year span. And if we are to believe Liza's internet, online, inflation calculator, $12 would equal the $2 in 1970. Surprisingly.
Do you want me to double check my sources? 'Cause I
No.
can double check.
I'd like you to check 4 sources.
4 sources.
Yeah, and I'd like them cited. Okay, any further discussion?
There's a question.
Yes, oh, yes.
What
Just
if?
state your name for the
I'm
record,
sorry.
please.
Christine Sophis, 17 Jared Sparks Road. So what if the state ups at 26 cents to 30 cents next year? Can you put something in
That
the
would have-
motion to,
I think they would
Have
just come
it-
back to this
It would have to
board.
come back.
It would have
Okay.
to come back.
all right,
Because I think if we said anything that alluded to increasing it, it would,
automatically,
it would give
whatever
some,
the state
yeah,
has?
a little bit too much flexibility in the wrong hands. I don't feel like we have that now, but it could easily.
And frankly, it's easy enough to come back to the
Yeah.
board.
Because it's just a Board of Selectmen decision, makes it a little bit easier.
Confirmation with a second source. just
Second source
FYI.
confirmation.
Okay, so,
The internet, so, so now we have a motion on the floor and a second. And any more discussion? Okay, I just wanna make sure we're.
it's in regard to the motion.
Go ahead.
So the motion is to accept the fees, but the
Yes.
motion is not to decide who's going to be the responsible party for the fees?
Oh, no, they would stay the same way, the user is,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
If we didn't have the fees, then they would be at the budget,
General-
again,
general
because
fund.
it's going to cover that budget, then it would come from the general fund. So,
Thank
and there's still a potential that these don't cover all of,
Mhm.
the budgetary requirements in that department. That's still possible, very possible. All right, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Name?
No abstentions? Motion passes. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we are on to good and welfare. So I have a couple things. I want to thank the garden club. They moved plants from the front of the building in anticipation for our ramp, which is there, and so that we could salvage some things. They did some nice work. So I want to thank them for both doing the work prior to and then moving them to save the plants. There's a group in town, I think I've mentioned them before. It's, It Takes a Village Hill, a little play off that It Takes a Village. And Sarah Reese has started this, this group, and she's really into acknowledging, recognizing people who do things in this town when someone needs help. And it can be as simple as helping find a pet that belongs to someone or a family that is in need of someone. In this case, she is hosting a local heroes breakfast. She wanted to give back to our first responders to say thank you. So although it is a private function, it's specifically for both our paid and volunteer local heroes and their families. It is this Sunday, October 21st at Willington Hill Fire Department. She's looking for anyone who'd like to donate in either food items or monetary items. So if you're interested in that, you could contact our office and we can put you in touch with Sarah. So I think it's a really nice thing that, that she's taken on. So, and thank you to her, both her and our first responders. If you remember some time ago, we had been asked about putting flags up on the green and farther. We received, a letter from Phil Monty, he actually came in on Thursday or Friday, added a letter, as I drove through many surrounding towns, I see a large number of American flags displayed on poles around towns. As I look around Willington, I only see 4 flags that are on the side of the town green. I remember seeing more flags around town that are now displayed. I would like to see additional flags, flag kits, flagpole and holder purchased and displayed around town. I would like to see flags from the senior center, up the road past the town hall, all the way to the town library. Most of the flags would be on old farms, so no permission, but the towns would be needed to place the flags there. The additional flags on 74 would probably need state approval. He's proposed a form that he created to be distributed that would allow individuals and groups to purchase the flags to display. I've talked to a number of seniors at the senior center and to VFW members, and there's interest in getting and displaying more flags. It would be great to do this, or at least start to get them for Veterans Day, November 11th. I would be willing to install the flags at appropriate height to save the town additional expense of putting up the flags. I'm also willing to serve on a committee to help make this happen. So he enclosed both the check, which does not seem like a sample, does seem real to me, although it's still on here, and a sample form. So this idea means there would be a committee. I might disagree that we wouldn't need as many permissions as he thinks from the senior center up, because there are plenty of homes between us and the library that would require, what side of the road are they on? Are they on this side of the road, are they on the other side of the road? I think we all agreed we like the idea, but it came with some logistical issues. And in other towns, we tend to see a more Main Street, where that is a lot easier to do. Not to say that it isn't, but it's something for us to think about. So, I don't know if you all have any thoughts, but I said I would share that. I wanted to thank the town of Stafford for the use of their speed trailer on Cesar Road. Right now, it is in terrible directions. It's going from 320 towards Penny Hill. It only works in one direction, and I drive that way, so you all do too, so I know that it only goes in one direction, because I thought maybe it was broken the first time. Did you hear back from them?
No, I didn't.
I did ask Robin to reach out to them to see if we could keep it an extra week to turn it around, so we could have information going in both directions.
So it does collect information
does
that we
collect-
can download and
It
like-
does. So we had,
Okay.
the state had put it up, or the Troop C in Stafford, well, it had to have been Troop C that authorized it, to put up on 74. When we did that, and it gave us really nice data, so we know we can get data from it. But I'd be interested in data going in both directions, not just one direction. So, so we're waiting to hear if we can, it's still up, if we can have it for another week to see what we can get there. So we'll see what happens with that. I wanna thank them for allowing us to.
He's on vacation now.
Yes, October 6th, so last Saturday, was the 16th annual car show on the green. And this year it benefited the Marine Corps Law Enforcement Foundation. It was a great event. I was honored to be asked to judge, and there were a lot of really nice cars to choose from. And I think I may have said it before the show, but I definitely want to thank Joe Philippi for all the work he puts into that event. It was a nice event, and they raised $1,846 for the Marine Corps Law Enforcement Foundation. So thank you once again to Joe Philippi and those group that helps them out. They put on a nice event, and they always find a worthy group to donate their time to. Anyone else have anything for good and welfare?
I have one thing for you.
Yes, sir.
The motion probably should have had an effective date.
Oh, you asked me that.
I asked it.
Right, because otherwise it would be effective today.
Right. We're not prepared to do it tomorrow.
How much lead time do you need? Because we have to go back and fix them.
Can
How
you
much
do it
lead
at
time
this
do you
meeting, or
need?
do you have to do it at another meeting?
This one.
I believe we
I
can still
think
change it
I
now.
think we would have to do it now,
Right
because
now.
otherwise it would be.
It would be in effect, it would go in effect
My
tomorrow.
recommendation would be for November 1st.
Okay.
Okay. So friendly amendment, is that how we do it? Even though we've already voted?
November 1st.
November effective date?
Do we need
We need to,
Should we make a motion?
I think we should make a motion.
I'd make a motion to amend the previous decision to make it effective November 1st, 2018.
I'll second that. Any discussion? So the motion is to amend our previous vote to allow for an effective date of November 1st, 2018. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
You too.
Are we having a trunk or
Oh,
treat?
yes, the trunk or treat. There is the PTA is doing a trunk or treat. It is, during the day this year, so
Oh,
it's
good.
Saturday.
Yeah.
It's,
Okay.
there's some
When you-
mixed
When you
emotions.
first said it, I heard trump or treat, and I went, no.
No,
Please,
a
no.
trunk or treat. So it'll be at Center School. It is Saturday, the 27th of October, from 1:30 to 3:30. It is during the day this year. The PTA had some feedback that a lot of the families had younger children, so at nighttime, it was a little more difficult for people to get there, and they had little kids and it was dark. So the only negative I could find in that when I went to their meeting was, so things don't light up. If that's the worst you have, go for it. So they're gonna try it this year, then they'll have a night and a day to compare, and then they can go forward. But it's a really nice event, so if anyone's interested in hosting a trunk, they can reach out to, I believe it's Dawn Derna with the PTA. So either one of the schools give you information, or I have that in my office. But that is Saturday the 27th. And then we meet before, but election day is Tuesday, November 6th. I keep saying the 7th, it's not the 7th. And again, the town office building will be closed to the public if our front entrance is not fully functioning.
But it's gonna go great.
It's gonna go great. The registrars, Robin and the registrars and myself started meeting a couple months ago in anticipation for something to be off shut. So if they could start demolition soon. So I will note too, one more, when the demolition begins, if you do come to the town hall, it may be very loud. It will be very loud. The tax office will most likely be closed for the days in which they're jackhammering right outside their window, because they are on the ramp. They will not be able to hear anything. They've told us repeatedly that the registrar's office, my office, and Robin's will be very difficult to hear, but it would be impossible for them to hear a phone ring, never mind a conversation, inside the tax office. And they had too much equipment to pick up and move somewhere else. So we're hoping they can do it Monday, but we'll see how that goes. Play it by ear. So with that, I'll move to adjourn at 7:33.
Second.